So what I'd like to look at in the parsha this week is the parsha. The Vayakhel Pekudei ends the Sefer of Shmot, the book of Shmot, and in ending the Sefer of Shmot, it really describes how Bnei Israel took the instruction from Moshe and actually started to build the Mishkan according to the way Moshe instructed them. Now, the first part of the building of the Mishkan is actually getting all the necessary material that the Mishkan needs. And so, therefore, what I want to look at is a little bit around that process that happened. Because I think that'll give us a little bit of an insight into, well, we'll see. Let's see how it goes. So the Torah says, I'm in Shmot Lamed Vav Zayin. So Shmot Lamed Vav Zayin describes how they brought, Lamed Vav describes how they brought all the stuff that they needed to bring. And at the last pasuk of Lamed Vav, the pasuk of Lamed Vav Zayin says, V'hamlacha yatad dayam l'chol hamlacha la'asot ota voter. And they translate that as the hamlacha, the work. Hayatad dayam, it was enough, it was more than enough. L'chol hamlacha, to all the work. La'asot, to do ota voter, and there was excess. So the question is, what does this all mean? What does it mean that it was enough and there was excess? And it's to try really get to grips with what this means. We're just going to look at Rashi. Rashi says, what does it mean? That the malacha, that the work was enough for them for all the work that they did. So it says Rashi, it says what it means that that the people that were doing the work on the Mishnah, they had actually done enough. They'd done so much with all the work that they needed to do for the building of the Mishkan. They could even leave some of the stuff over because there was such an excess of desire to be part of the Mishkan that there was this excess. So comes along the Ben Ish Chai, and the Ben Ish Chai is going to teach us something which I found was astoundingly beautiful, because it'll teach us about how we're supposed to do things. So he says, the Ben Ish Chai, and excuse me, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read and translate as we go through. So the Ben Ish Chai says, quoting from the Orach Chaim, he asks a question. He says, the word dayam in the pasuk, which means it's enough, means it's enough. But the word hoter means that there's too much, there's excess. So he says, how does it work? Either there was enough or there was excess. So he says the following. But Salel and all the people that were working with him, that were building the Mishkan, they were making a physical Mishkan. That's what they were doing. He says, whilst they're making the physical Mishkan, while they were also doing the actual physical work of screwing things in or whatever they needed to do, they also did malacha acheret ruchanit. They were also doing a spiritual malacha, a spiritual creative activity. Because they had special kavanas, special intentions, special focus in every single physical action that they were doing. And as we explained at another place, he explained that through in having specific kavanas and putting together the physicality of the Mishkan, they brought down the Or Kedusha, this holy light, ala kelim agashmiyim, on these physical vessels. For example, ka'adama oise kli nechoshes. He says, like a person who's making copper. So what is he trying to? What he really wants is he wants it to be gold. He's making it nechoshet, and he's going to polish it so that it shines like burnished copper, like gold. But he really wants the gold, because the gold is going to make it a kli ilui rav, much higher level of vessel. So too, when they were just taking the physical things, they imbued those physical things not only with the physicality and the perfection of the physicality as commanded by Kodesh Baruch Hu, but also what they wanted to do, as he says, was lenatkam min mina gashmi, to attach from the physicality of this thing, uledavkam benitzchiyot, but to attach them to something eternal. ora kedusha, through the light of kedusha, asher horidu aleim b'kavanot, that they were able to bring into these vessels with the kavanot, with the special intention that they had. And I think that just as a start, before we get anywhere else, is quite an incredible thing, because what they're really saying to us is that the ability of Bezalel wasn't just the ability of him to understand how to put things together, but rather the ability of Bezalel, and that's what made him so great, was his ability to take the physicality and uplift it. I know Rav Kook speaks about this. Rav Kook speaks about the things that taking that which is physical and uplifting it. We do it in so many different ways. Sometimes we're not even conscious of it. But imagine if we were conscious of it and really worked hard in ensuring that we could elevate the physical things that we build into something much more spiritual, that the world would be a different place. So carries on the Ben Ish Chai. And he says that's what made, as he said, Bezalel so special. Yodea haya Bezalel. What was it that made him so special? The Gemara in Brochus tells us that Bezalel was able to tzaref otiyot shenivru b'hem shamayim v'aretz. He was able to join together the letters that the shamayim v'aretz, that the world was created with. Kihu al yedei kavanato, because him, through his kavanas, listen carefully, chiber davar gashmi, he connected the physicality, shiur chelek haaretz, which is part of the ground, im or ruchani shiur chelek shamayim, with the spiritual light, which is part of shamayim. Imagine that he's able to connect what's on high with what's below, and that's what it means v'hamelacha, because it says, when it says in the pasuk that the melacha was enough, hamelacha haruchanit, that the spiritual creative activity, that the spiritual work that he did, by having the right kavodas in the work that he did, was enough for all the malacha gashmit, for all the physical stuff, to do it in order there was enough of his intention to bring an enormous amount of this ruchni light, of this spiritual light, to imbue into all the vessels. And there were hundreds of vessels. It wasn't just the Aron and the Mizbeach. There were also all the little vessels that they needed to use in order to do all the different works, the plates and the dishes and the spades and the jugs, you name it, all these things. There was such an enormous amount of ruchni impetus into them that it filled them also, the physical things, with a spirituality. And because of that, there was enough. There was more than enough. There was excess. And when you have excess in your in the bringing down of the spiritual into your physical, then it gives a sustainable, endless future to the physicality. Masha'ain came, that wouldn't have been the case. He said if it was only done simply as a physical thing, then there would have not been any ruchnius inside it. He said that includes anything that we do. Anything that we do that is simply done for the physicality of it, it has no sustainable future. And so therefore, what we learn from this is an incredible thing, that our ability to create sustainability in the physical things in which we involve ourselves in is dependent on the intention that we have. When we build that physicality, do we have a ruchni, do we have a spiritual intention as well? Or is it just simply to build something? Do we just build a building, or do we build a building and imbue it with the spirituality of a Beit Midrash? Do we build it with the spirituality of a place for Shalom Bayit? Do we build a building with the spirituality of being able to heal people in a hospital, for example? That's up to us. What we put in will determine the longevity of the building. And so therefore it's clear that no matter what we're doing, we've got to ensure that we bring in a spirituality into this on a regular level. What I want to do is carry on. And there's Rabbi Shah held, I read this beautiful statement that he makes. So we've got this Mishkan that we have to make. But he says the journey of the Israelites is from one building project to another. They transform from slaves of the earthly ruler to servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the heavenly ruler. Freedom, as imagined by the book of Shmot, is not about casting off the burdens of service altogether. In fact, he says, it says a great deal about our secularized society. When we speak about the demand that Paro, let my people go, we forget the telos of the call, the telos meaning the spirituality behind it. It's one thing, it's the same thing. The gashmi, let my people go, the sense of physical freedom has to be accompanied with what? With the concept of avduni, that they want to serve me. The Torah is passionately concerned with the journey from slavery to freedom, but it imagines freedom in ways that are different from the ways to freedom is commonly spoken of in contemporary consumerist society in which we live. Doing whatever I want, whenever I want, is arguably not freedom at all, but enslavement to impulse. The depth of freedom are discovered not in self-assertion, but in rare moments of authentic self-transcendence. Authentic freedom, Jewish theology insists, is found in the service of something and someone greater than oneself. And at this point, I would just like to say that that's what we do in the Shiur. We're doing something that is service greater than ourselves. We're learning Torah. There is a beautiful idea of I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. What he says is the following: when we say the brachas for learning Torah, at the end we speak about the Talmud Torah keneged kulam, that the learning of Torah is corresponds to all the things that we do, and there, what it specifically speaks about is all the chesed that we do. The chesed that we do of helping others, of making shalom ben adam lechaveru, all these different things is chesed. And then it says v'talmud Torah keneged kulam. And so he asks the question, and he wants to understand, how can you say Talmud Torah keneged chesed? Because Talmud Torah is, we would think, is ben adam lechaveru, and it's ben adam lemakom, and all the chesed is ben adam lechaveru. And he says, no, we don't understand, because when we learn Torah, what we do is we give deep spiritual power to the world, because the Gemara tells us if there was one moment of Torah one moment in which the world was existing, where there was no Torah being learned, then the world would just fall apart. Because Torah is really, it's like the plug. You got to plug it in. You got to plug it into Torah in some way. And so the Torah gives us the ability to build worlds, and that's why today's Shiur actually is in the merit of Moshe David ben Leah, who is not well. He had a mild stroke. He's okay, Baruch Hashem. But his wife asked me to do the Shiur in his merit, and that's what the merit is. The merit is seeing that when we're learning, it's not just a physical information gathering, but it's something about the service of something greater than ourselves. And let's see where that manifests itself in such a powerful way. So it says the Torah continues, and it says, "Vayasu kol chacham leiv b'ois hamalacha." That all the way they translate it is that all the skilled people did all the work. Et Mishkan Esher Yeriot Sheish Mosar. And what did they start with? They started with the building of the Yeriot. The Yeriot are the cloth tapestries that covered the Mishkan. Speaks about all the different detail and the design of the kruvim that was in these beautiful tapestries. On that, the Sforno, Italian commentary, says the following. When it says the kol chacham leiv did the amalacha, he's saying, so who are these chacham leiv? He says, ayoter chachamim shabem. We're talking about the most qualified, the best people, the most experienced people are involved in doing all the weaving of all these things in the cloth, because it was such a complicated thing. And so therefore, you need to have the best of the best, who are the ones who are busy doing the weaving. However, the Netziv comes up, and the Netziv says that we need to understand that it's not just the Chachmei Leiv. It's not just the ones who are the cleverest. And he says the following. He says, whilst we understand that the Sforno says that we're talking about the most experienced, Aval Ta'amo Chalash, his reasoning is not so great. He says, already we understood that the word Chacham Leiv doesn't mean, when we speak about a person who's Chacham Leiv, a person who's wise in their heart. It doesn't mean that they've got chokhmah. It doesn't mean that they just know how to do things. But chacham lev is much deeper than just knowledge. Chacham lev is yirat Hashem. It's the ability to do things with yirat Hashem, with reverence, to connect the physical to the spiritual. And he says, therefore, what does it mean that v'chol chacham lev did the oseh melacha? V'hu da'achar she'iskim b'tzalel la'akdim ma'aseh ha'mishkan ha'kelim mishum zeh ha'chel ha'yiriot. He says, first you have to understand, when the Torah tells us how to build the Mishkan, the Torah gives an order of all the kelim, and then it gives the order of the actual physical structure of the Mishkan. So all the vessels will come first, then the structure which will house all those vessels, how it will house the Aron and the Mizbeach and the Shulchan, all these things. But Tzalel says, hold on a second. How can you tell me to first make the vessels? First, I've got to make the structure that will house the vessels. Different from the way in which the Torah gives the order. He wanted to do it in another order. And so therefore he says that we have to understand that there's something very deep in Betzalel creating the Yeriot, that's the outside before the inside. And what's the depth of it? Is that he created the things that, in inverted commas, have less Kedusha than the things inside first. So the less Kedusha is created before the more Kedusha. And says the Netziv that the reason why the Torah is telling us this is because the Torah is telling us that there is an enormous issue that comes up as Betzalel decides to do it not in the order in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it in order in the level of Kedusha. It started with the Aron. He started with the place that housed, the object that housed the Torah, the Luchot, everything that was fundamental. It's the thing that is going to be housed in the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. Hashem starts with that. But Tzalel says, no, we're going to start from the outside in. And if that's the case, the question is, what am I moise manef? What am I moise nefesh on? What am I going to commit myself to? Am I going to wait until things of a higher Kedusha? Or do I get involved there and then? And he says there, Nafal safek le'eze davar yimtzu nafsham techila. The people didn't know what to do. Should they work hard on putting up these yeriot or wait? Im la yeriot hamuktamim. Should they start doing those things? Because we've got a concept. There's a concept called Zrizim Makdimin LeMitzvot, that the zealous people start doing mitzvahs as soon as they possibly can. That's why we have a Brit Milah as soon as we can in the morning. And many years ago, when my eldest son was born, so he was born at a time called Bein Hashmashot. Bein Hashmashot means after sunset, but before nightfall. So the sun goes down. There's no longer a sun, but still a little bit light. And then there's this period called Bein Hashmashot, and then the stars come out and it's dark. So he's born during that period of time. So according to the problem with being born in that period of time is, which day is his actual birthday? Is his day the day before sunset, or is the day after nightfall? And it creates a bit of a suffix. The problem is he was born on a Thursday, and because he was born on a Thursday, and he's the firstborn from a natural birth, non-Kohen, which means he has to have a Pidyon Haben. And the question is, when is he going to have his Pidyon Haben? So his Pidyon Haben, the 30th day, actually fell out on Shabbos. You never have a Pidyon Haben on Shabbos. The question was, does he have it Motzei Shabbos, or because it's really Shabbos, so he's got to have it as soon as possible, or does he have it Sunday? And halacha is you don't do it at night, so he's got to do it Sunday morning. So it's an amazing thing to have a Pidyon Haben. Not many people are zoche to do it. We felt very privileged, and we wanted to invite people and really make something out of it. So we invite people. It's quite early in the morning after davening. So davening is at 8, so we invited everybody to come at 9. And I was discussing with Rabbi Cheskel Albach about what we're going to do and when he should come. So I said to him, look, well, what we'll do is we'll have the davening, we'll go to shul, and then we'll come back after that, and then we'll give people a few things to eat, and then we'll do the Pidyon Haben. He said, what do you mean? And he went like a little bit crazy with me in his own special, beautiful way. He said, what do you mean? How can you wait for people to eat? It's rizim makdim in the mitzvahs. When you've got a mitzvah to do, you've got to do it as soon as you possibly can. So we told people to come, and as soon as the enough people were there, some people missed it because they thought they'd get food first, right? The great Jewish malady of coming late for the food. But so people, so zrizim makdim in mitzvahs, we try to do our mitzvahs as soon as we possibly can. Or maybe that's not their attitude. Maybe, says the Netziv, the attitude is lit'acher shelo la'asot. Maybe we shouldn't be doing the things that this basic stuff that has not got such a huge kedusha just because it's a mitzvah. Maybe we must wait, and we must wait to do the mitzvah sheyagiu lemekudashim yoter, of the highest level of kedusha. And comes along the chachamim, the chachmei leiv, those people who understood things. Vayasu kol chacham leiv b'oisam malacha. All those who really understood the depth of what it means to be a yid is not to wait for things of higher kedusha. Haskimu chachmei leiv yoter lagdim lizdareis l'riyot. They understood that they've got to be mizdareis. They've got to start and they've got to get the yiriyot in place. They've got to get these other things in place because those are the things that at this point in time are the things that need to be built. And so there's, we see that's a very powerful thing, a very, very powerful thing that Chazal are teaching us in these psukim, is that sometimes we'll have doubts as to which way to go. Do we do a mitzvah now, or do we wait to do it on a higher level? And comes along the Herchav Davar, also the Netziv, and he says, Kfar nifla chakira b'mitzvah. We've already seen that this thing falls out with any mitzvahs. That if you wait a little bit more, it'll have a much bigger impact, it would seem. That if a mitzvah which will have a bigger impact, we should wait for, or does it fall into a category of mitzvahs where the Torah tells us mitzvah haba'a liyadcha al techamtzena, that a mitzvah that comes to your hand al techamtzena, from the word chometz. It's perfect time for Pesach. It's a good vortis, right? There's the concept of chometz. It says ushmartem et hamatzot, that we must guard the matzot. From here we learn the mitzvah of shmura matzah. Ushmartem et hamatzot. Come Chazal and make a bit of a drosha. Ushmartem et hamitzvot. They say you must guard the mitzvot, not the matzahs, the mitzvahs, because you spell it the same way, especially because there's no vowels in the Torah, right? So it says when you get a mitzvah that comes, into your hands, al techamtzena, don't allow it to become chometz. In the same way as you don't allow matzah, you got a definitive time to make it. As the minute you put the water into the flour, you don't allow it to become chometz. So to the mitzvah, with the mitzvah, you mustn't allow it to become chometz. And the question is, which type of mitzvahs are we allowed to become chometz, so to speak, or is it a blanket rule to all of those? And comes the Netziv and he says that the mitzvah lahaktim yoter vaday necha sheyuchach melev hazrizim makdim. He says, the truth is that for the mitzvahs that you always want to get quickly, those with the chachmei lev, those people who really connected are zrizim umakdim, and they always go first. They try and do it as much as they can. He says, but even according to the opinion that we should wait, that we should try and do a mitzvah in the best way. When you've got one mitzvah, that you can do that mitzvah in the best way possible. So let's say for example, you need to, I'm thinking about tefillin because I'm busy with somebody with tefillin. So you need to buy tefillin for a child who's now going to become bar mitzvah. So today you've got 3,000 rand. You won't buy anything. Say 10,000 rand. Right? Today you've got 10,000 rand. You now have got an opportunity to buy tefillin. Do you buy them today when you have the 10,000 rand, or that in 3 weeks' time you're going to have 50,000 rand as an example, and you can buy an even better pair? So what should you do? So it seems to be that yes, zrizim magdim in the mitzvahs, you do the mitzvah as soon as you can. But wait a second, if it's one mitzvah that if you wait a little bit, you'll be able to do it in a better way, then for sure you do the mitzvah in a better way. But when you have two mitzvahs, you've got two mitzvahs. The one is the yiriyot, the outer establishment of the Mishkan, and the other one is to build the internal. Which do you do? Do you wait to build the internal, or are you mitzvah? Are you part of the external one, which is less kedusha? Vada yesh lizdarez lahakodemet. You've got to do the one that you can do as quickly as you can do. And that's why he says, V'chein b'maaseh mishkan, in the maaseh of the mishkan, v'tachlito, and its essence. Lo hayu hakelim meshamshim b'lo hechsher mechitzah shel hamishkan. You couldn't use the kelim without having the external of the mishkan. V'lo dami lebeit hamikdash. It's not the same as the Beit Hamikdash. Because what? Shemakrivin afa pi she'ein bayit, that they were able to bring korbanot in the Beit Hamikdash, even though there wasn't a specific Beit Hamikdash. Right? Why? Because Kedusha Rishon shel Beit Hamikdash Rishon Kitchel Adoros. Because the Kedusha of the Beit Hamikdash, in the rebuilding of the second Beit Hamikdash, even though there wasn't the most beautiful edifice, they were able to bring the korbanot because the Kedusha, the sanctity of the first Beit Hamikdash, extended into it, because that's how they built it. They built a physical thing with unbelievable kavanot to make sure that it extended for all Dorot. But in the Mishkan was always dependent on the external structure. Without the external structure, there was nothing in the Mishkan, which is why every time they stopped, they had to re-put up the Mishkan. Why do you have to put up the Mishkan? Just put on your Aron, your Kalim, do your Avodah and finish. No, you have to put up the Mishkan every single time, all based on the mechitzot of the Uriah, the mechitzot, the walls of the Uriot of these beautiful tapestries. Pshita, says the Netziv, da Uriot kadmu gam lemalacha. So therefore it must be that the Yeriot, which may not have the highest level of Kedusha, but they define what will become the Mishkan, certainly they take precedence over everything else. Because sometimes, some of the commentaries explain, sometimes what we do is that we lose sight of what is real. What's really real in the case of the Mishkan, for example, is not only the beautiful vessels, the golden things, but what's beautiful in the case of the Mishkan is that the Mishkan needed to be within a structure. And that structure demands the work first. But sometimes we think we've got to look at the inside before we look at the structure. But if we can build the structure and make sure, and I don't only mean like a physical structure, like a Mishkan, it's anything, our structure, our lives, how we structure our day, what do we do with ourselves? When we wake up in the morning, and I know for us as men, I suppose it's much easier. We wake up in the morning, we've got a structure, we've got to go to shul, you've got to daven, you put on tefillin, and then your day carries on. But that structure, people feel that they don't necessarily need. I had a discussion with somebody, told me he's battling with his ruchnius, he's battling with his spirituality. So he's a very very pedantic type of person in the way he does his work, and the way he dresses, and the way he lives his life, and his house is in a very pristine, wonderful space, and it's beautiful. So I said to him, what you've done is that you don't, what time do you daven? He said, oh, whatever, whenever I wake up. So I said, immediately, you don't have that structure. Very often, the davening is like the Aron Kodesh, but the structure, meaning I daven at 7 o'clock or whatever the time is, that is the Yeriot. And without the Yeriot, you cannot have a perfection of the Kedusha inside, because it's not the Beit HaMikdash. Because we as human beings, in our finite manner, are unable to take Kedusha ourselves through generations. We're unable to take Kedusha from one moment to the next. There's only one way we can. That's why it says, Ki ner mitzvah v'torah or, that the mitzvot are a ner. The mitzvot are a candle. And a candle eventually goes out. But Torah is or, Torah is light. The way we give ourselves motivation, the way we give ourselves inspiration is through the learning of Torah. But the way we manifest that inspiration is by the doing of mitzvot, because then the light is constantly being turned on and constantly being renewed. So the learning of Torah is important. The mitzvot are important, but most important of all is to understand that yes, sometimes there is a suffix, a conflict between, do we do the mitzvah now, or do we do it a little bit later, even better? And it's all going to depend. Is it because you have to do, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting to do the one mitzvah in a better way, or are there two mitzvahs you're not sure which one to do? When it comes to two mitzvahs, we've got to make sure we bring the light. We light that candle immediately. And that's why we say, Zizim makdimin lemitzvot. And that's really what this parasha is about Am Yisrael, who were so zaris, they were so careful to do what they could do and bring as much as they could do. Hayad dayam, it was enough. There was so much, but we understand that the dayam, that the voter, the enoughness and the extra of it is not just a physical thing. It's through their heart, through their intention, that they give it a universal appeal. It gives it a universal and a constant nitzchit. It's forever. When we bring things with our hearts, even though it might be for a smaller thing, and not the highest level of kedusha, that maintains it forever, and it's sustainable into the future, and in fact leaves a legacy for all of us to be able to enjoy. I wish everybody a beautiful day. Hope you enjoyed that Torah, and Bezrat Hashem will